Hello, hello, hello. It is a dark, dark day in Berlin in October. Halloween is coming up, and this is the best time to tell you about something, as Jane Austen would say, something very horrid to have come out of America in 2023. It's the Magicians, Martyrs Madmen Tarot by Travis McHenry. And here is the lovely Travis McHenry. He studied anthropology at Bloomberg University in Pennsylvania. And as a practicing occultist and ritual magician, he's the author of Occult Tarot, Angel Tarot, and Vlad Dracula Tarot. So here are the lovely cards. And the illustrator is a woman called Kristin Gottberg. And I just have to have a little rant here, which is that as far as I can see, the illustrator's name does not appear on the box or on the front or back of the book or at the front of the book or even, it says here, copyright text and illustrations, Travis McHenry. And then it says illustrations by Kristin Gottberg. And I just have a little rant here, which is that I think that in the modern world, when we all spend so much time bewailing the fact that Pamela Coleman Smith didn't get her name on the front of, the RWS tarot for 100 years. But that is still, standard practice that, it's all about the person who wrote the book, isn't it? And who conceived the tarot. Okay, so let's get going. I will show you some of these cards while also talking about them. The illustration style, I think, is quite bizarre. It seems to be, it says Kristin Gottberg is a Venezuelan artist with a passion for digital design. So you get the impression this was designed on a computer, and you can't quite tell whether this is illustration or whether it's collage. Let me show you what I mean here. If we look at like this one here, the moon, and each of these cards is just like one magician, martyr, or madman, and they're mostly madmen and madwomen. That, to me, is clearly very, very reminiscent of a photograph. And so, sure, artists can do illustrations based on photographs, but sometimes it looks like it's a bit cut and pasted. Like in this one, it really looks like the face has been sort of stuck onto a body. This one to me looks very like a photograph that's been sort of painted over. And here, Justice, we basically have a picture of Vincent Price. And then it's all been sort of, pulled together into a sort of sketchy, painterly style. A gloomy, sketchy, painterly style. And with a strange sort of blurriness and lack of definition. Maybe the blurriness and lack of definition was done in order to sort of cover up the joins between the bits of the collage. It's difficult to tell. It's really difficult to tell. What I would say is that I find it extremely, extremely gloomy, and I find that the illustrations don't seem to contain an awful lot of information. Look, that's Jack the Ripper on the death card. It's very, 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 very gloomy. Here's another one, the Temperance card, Angeline Tubbs. There she is standing on a cliff. You can see it's not my camera's fault because the writing is quite distinct, but the illustration is a bit of a blur. So, that's my tuppenny halfpenny worth about the illustrations. What I want to say is that my lovely tarotist flatmate Jacopo, he runs out and buys tarots, sight unseen. I'm different. I have to be absolutely sure I'm going to like a tarot before I buy it, before I spend my hard-earned cash on it. And so I watch reviews on YouTube and I watch flip-throughs, and then I decide if I'm going to buy it or not. Jacopo will just run out and buy it and then deal with the consequences. And I get to see quite a heterodox assortment of tarots, really like a lucky dip. So this tarot is like way, way outside the sort of thing that I would normally even look at, because I'm quite I'm quite a sensitive soul and I'm not really into horror. And this is a horror tarot, clearly. It's also, I think, courtesy of the lovely Travis McHenry, I think it's fair to say that this is, as Jacopo puts it, and Jacopo loves this tarot, he calls it a sophisticated joke at the very, very highest level of sophistication. And I think that is arguably the case. And, you know, I'm a writer and I understand that tastelessness is an aesthetic mode. And so one cannot object to this tarot on grounds of tastelessness. It's extremely tasteless. I'll tell you why. So the concept is that all 78 tarot cards basically get a serial killer or a magician or a martyr, or maybe a family of serial killers. And it says magicians, martyrs and madmen, but flicking through the book, there is a large contingent of murderers and cannibals in this deck. It could have been called the Madmen, Martyrs and Magicians Tarot, I think. I think it's not. I think it's a bit disingenuous to say that it's about magicians. It could have been just called the Bloodthirsty Bastards Tarot. It's got, for example, Queen Mary of England, who was just like a horrible monarch. But each tarot card has a person on it and has an anecdote, a sort of a horror anecdote about how that person did something really awful, or sometimes how that person was doing their best, but other people did something awful to the person, like in the case of the martyrs in this deck. But let's dive in and let me read you what it says about the Fool card at number 1. The Fool card at number 0. Here we have James Douglas. James Douglas, 3rd Marquis of Queensberry, was considered from his youth to be an imbecile. His behaviour was so bad that he had to be restrained in the basement of Holyrood Palace in Edinburgh. In 1707, at the age of 9, James escaped from his cell and murdered a cook in the kitchen. He was discovered roasting the cook's body parts over an open fire and eating pieces of the meat. The Duke used his power to cover up the incident and had James locked away in an estate outside the city. Well, what a grim story. And then the commentary, this is how Travis McHenry links this appalling story to the Fool in the tarot. The Fool can indicate folly, mania, or extravagance, although it also stands for new beginnings. As the first card in the deck, James Douglas represents brash behaviour, jumping without thinking, and the folly of committing acts of violence. However, it also shows a person who knows themselves, knows what they want in life, and just goes for it. Sometimes we can be indecisive and wander through life without purpose or aim. James Douglas knew from the start he wanted to be a cannibal killer. He didn't wait until he was old enough to pursue his dream, and he didn't wait for somebody to give him permission! ! He followed his instincts and listened to his heart to accomplish his goals early in life. Well, when I read that, I was sort of thinking that this might really work for me as comedy. I think, in a sense, that is quite good comedy. It's pitch black comedy. He followed his heart, didn't he? And he roasted the cook and ate her. So then I started to think, well, to what extent are these horrific tales coherently linked to tarot cards? And the linking it's a bit tenuous, but it is there. I checked my tarot Bible, which coincidentally is in the same shade of blue, Mystical Origins of the Tarot by Paul Hewson. And Paul Hewson gives us traditional meanings of tarot cards down the years. You know, the meanings from various different sources in various different centuries. And it seems that Travis McHenry has been researching all this pretty thoroughly. And he, the devil that he is, has found sort of the darkest tarot card meanings he could find. And it seems that mostly he's been reading A.E. Waite. So here Waite says in 1910, the Fool, folly, mania, extravagance, intoxication, delirium, frenzy. Well, yes, so that does apply to that little boy in the cellar. But what I want to say is what this deck and this book really gives us is something which I think sort of goes in the opposite direction to where most contemporary tarot reading goes, including mine, ladies and gentlemen. So it's a use of tarot which is completely a mystery to me. I'm not sure how you could use this deck. So the connections between the cards, the bloody stories, and the traditional tarot cards, the connections are there. They're a bit tenuous. They're not really terribly convincing. So the creation of this thing is really like a performance. It's like performance art. You buy this deck and you think, oh, wow, I hadn't thought of that. Wow, oh, that's not very nice. And it's like a horror experience. I don't think I would use this deck if I was on a desert island and it was the only deck I had. I don't think I could make it work. Some of them are more convincing than others, but if we stay in the major arcana, there's the Empress, and the Empress is, this Countess Dracula woman who bathed in blood. Sure enough, if you check traditional meanings, the Empress is about female power. And if you really push that meaning, then, as Travis McHenry says, women have the power to give life and also to take it. So that's a kind of like a Kali aspect of the Empress. But, which of us wants to be confronted with Countess Dracula every time the Empress card comes down? Obviously some people do. But not me. Not me, not really. Let me show you some other cards that sort of struck me as pushing it a bit. Well, it all strikes me as pushing it a bit. Here, the Star. Okay, so we've got Mary Tudor, known in English history as Bloody Mary. And, Henry VIII's daughter, she reversed the Reformation. She wanted to go back to Roman Catholicism. And, in her reign, she had 300 Protestant priests burnt at the stake. Everyone was horrified, and she is remembered in England as Bloody Mary. And, she's connected to the star, and I'm really surprised at that, because for me the star is a very peaceful symbol, and it's the symbol of hope and the expanding of horizons. But this is what Travis McHenry says about Mary Tudor being the star. The star is a card of duality that symbolises love, beauty and peace, but also loss and privation. Well, that's true, according to some commentators. Queen Mary was an intensely spiritual woman who was kind to children, but her policies deliberately caused the deaths of hundreds of people. Behind her calm expression hangs a curtain stained with blood. And then he ends by saying, this card has a strong connection with water and movement, so whatever circumstances are present in the reader's life may be temporary, which seems like a sort of odd little bit of Jungian fluff at the end of his horror concepts. So I think that's really stretching it. As you go through the book, one of the themes that comes through is this theme of, the little boy who ate the cook in the cellar, who roasted and ate the cook in the cellar. There are other cannibal families and cannibal tribes in this book, like the Ten of Cups, the Sawney Bean clan. And the author repeats this joke of, they were just living their best lives. They didn't wait for anyone else's permission. They were just having fun. And, these cannibals, they always had plenty to eat, and follow your heart, follow your heart. So it feels like, to some extent, a really strong satire on tarot. A sort of very dark, you could say sophisticated satire on the concept of tarot. But I don't quite buy it. I don't think it quite works for me in that way. And I think the other side of it is that this is a book of 78 horror stories. And they really are horrendous. It's people torturing each other, eating each other, punishing each other, abusing their positions, enslaving each other. And it's so relentless that it really puts you off your dinner. I mean, he's got the sun symbolise the Marquis de Sade. And he says here, Students of the traditional tarot may find it odd to see a grown man whipping a girl as the sun. But Sard's achievement of total sexual satisfaction brought him pure joy. And again, I think that's a very tenuous connection. And even I would question whether that's really what de Sade was about. I think he was more of a philosopher than that. I'm not quite sure whether it was about pure joy. But anyways, so there you go. That's the Magician's, Martyrs Madmen Tarot. I'm not going to give a full flip through. I just wanted to alert you to the fact that this exists. We've got Halloween or Halloween coming up on the horizon. And although I don't recommend this as a working tarot deck, I would say that it's probably a very good Halloween present for that horror fan in your life. Okay, you've been watching Robert Farrer's Tea and Tarot. I will be back next week with more of this stuff. Bye.